You can get a sense of the culture of a firm within a few minutes of walking into it. You will know if they have a strong, high-performance culture or a who-gives-a-damn culture where people just kind of show up for a paycheck. You'll feel it before you can explain it. Something in the air, the way people move, the way they talk to each other, and whether they seem like they want to be there. That's culture, and whether you mean to or not, you're building one. The trick is to be deliberate about it. Culture is not an HR initiative. It's not a values poster on the wall. It's not a team building day once a year. Culture is what your people do when no one is watching. It's the decisions they make when there's no policy to follow. It's how they treat a customer when you're not in the room. And in a business your size, that's happening dozens of times a day without you. As I mentioned, something that many small business owners miss is that every business has a culture. You don't get to opt out. The question is whether you're purposeful about it, or whether it just accumulates the way dust does without anyone deciding that that's what they want. When culture happens by accident, it's usually a reflection of whoever has the most influence. Sometimes that's the owner, but not always. Sometimes it's a long-tenured employee whose habits, good or bad, quietly become the default. Either way, you didn't choose it, and at some point it starts choosing for you. Companies like Trader Joe's, Shopify, Southwest Airlines are legendary for their cultures. But none of that happens by accident. In every case, someone at the top made culture their job and kept it there. For a business your size, this is actually easier than it looks. It's much easier to steer a canoe than an ocean liner. You're close enough to the operation to shape it. The problem is, most owners don't try. Culture is not what you say it is. That's the part that trips people up. You can say you value accountability, but if people miss deadlines and nothing happens, that's your culture. You can say you value customers, but if complaints get deflected and buried, that's your culture. Culture is what you tolerate, what you reward, and what you visibly do yourself. Every day, you show up as the owner. You're either reinforcing the culture you want or quietly undermining it. I've worked with a lot of businesses over the years, and the ones with strong cultures, you can feel them from the parking lot. The ones without, you can feel that too. A kind of low-grade tension. People waiting to be told what to do. Nobody quite sure what the rules are, because the rules keep changing, depending on who's watching. Here's a useful test. Think about the last 5 significant decisions made in your business, by your managers, your team, anybody except for you. What values do those decisions reflect? Whatever your honest answer is, that's your real culture, whether you wrote it down or not. In my experience, bad hires almost never fail because of the skills. The technical screening, whether they can do the job, that's the easy part to assess. Bad hires don't work out because of values mismatch, and in a small team, you feel that immediately. One values mismatch can breed tension, erode trust, and slow everything down. In a 1,000-person company, that person might go unnoticed for months. In a 10-person team, they're going to immediately change the temperature of the entire room. And the cost is real. Recruitment, training, lost productivity. A bad hire can cost you up to 50% of that person's annual salary. And that doesn't count what happens to the people around them. It doesn't account for the hit to your culture. I've said this for years, and I believe it completely. You can teach skills. You cannot teach values. You either hire people who already have them, or you deal with the consequences. Which means the most important filter in your hiring process isn't the resume, it's not the interview, it's whether this person's values fit inside your culture. Anytime I've ever been in a leadership position, I've personally interviewed every single hire. Not to second guess their technical skills, their manager handled that before they ever got to me. My only job in that final meeting was cultural fit. I was the last line of defense. I'd watch how they treated the receptionist when they came in, or if I didn't see it, I would ask the receptionist later. Did they ask thoughtful questions or just sell themselves? Did they show any humility alongside their confidence? The technical interview tells you if they can do the job. The cultural interview tells you if they'll make the place better. I had this shtick that I used to do in these final interviews. First, I would ask the person, "Do you know why you're here right now?"
like, why are you talking to me at this moment in time? And they would often answer something like, you're trying to figure out whether I can do the job, or something along those lines. And I would quite often laugh and say, look, I'm not even qualified to do your job, so how in the world could I assess whether or not you can do that? That's your manager's job. That's what they did when they talked to you. The reason why you're talking to me is to figure out whether or not you fit inside our firm. And then I would take a piece of paper and I would draw a large circle and I would label it us. And I would say, this is our culture. And I kind of protect this fiercely. Then I would draw a small circle totally inside the first one. And I'd say, this is kind of a bad fit. You know, someone who disappears into what already exists adds nothing new. They just kind of reinforce the status quo. Then I would draw another circle completely outside of the first one. And I would say, this is also a bad fit, because this is a values mismatch. This person will fight the culture every single day. And what I was looking for was a smaller circle that mostly overlapped the first one, but extended slightly beyond it. And if we continue to add people like that, people that fit our values but bring something new that we don't already have, that helps to evolve the culture. And every right hire moves the company forward in a small way. And I'll tell you, in every company I ran, I never once had to use this veto. I think that says a lot about the quality of people that I had reporting to me. Most hiring questions are about the past. What have you done? Where have you worked? What were your results? Those are fine, but they're not what tells you about values. The questions that matter go somewhere else entirely. Things like, tell me about a time when you made a decision that wasn't popular but felt right. Or, how do you handle a situation where your manager is wrong? Or, what kind of environment brings out your best work? It's important to understand you're not scoring the answers here. You're listening for what the answers reveal. Who this person actually is underneath the rehearsed version they brought into the room.
Here's a great story about culture. Jeff Bezos had this one question he would ask every final round candidate at Amazon. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of your success do you attribute to luck? This was not to test humility, but rather to test mindset. People who recognize the role of external forces in their success, who know they didn't do it entirely alone, tend to be more grounded, more coachable, and more resilient under pressure. Now, the goal isn't to use Bezos' question, although that might not be a bad idea. The goal is to have your own, one that tells you something real about who the person is, and then to actually listen to the answer. A lot of owners push back on this. They say they don't have time to interview everyone. Too many things on their plate. My answer is always the same. You don't have time not to. A customer-facing hire who doesn't fit your values can damage a relationship that you spent years building. Or a leadership hire who cuts corners, teaches everybody below them to do the same, and can undermine your culture in a way that could take a long time to reverse. Culture is built one hire at a time, and it doesn't take many people to change the tone of a small company, for better or worse. When you, the owner, show up at the end of every hiring process, it sends a message to every candidate, to every person already on your team. It says, culture matters here, not as a poster, not as a talking point, but as a practice. The owner is always the culture architect, whether you act like it or not. Okay, so let's get practical. You understand why culture matters. You know it doesn't happen by accident. You know you need to hire for it. But what do you actually do? Well, I'll tell you what we did. I'll start with something that might sound like a very basic thing, but people underestimate it. I spent a weekend mulling over our values. Not every minute of every hour, but many hours. And I would write and then mull and test and then rest a while and then come back to it. And on the Monday, when I was finally clear on what I thought our values were, I got my partner's approval and buy-in. Once that was done, I called our communications person in and I asked him one question. Across all of our offices, not including the bathrooms, how many rooms do we have? At the time, we had 8 offices, sales, and warehouses across North America. He was a little bit puzzled, but anyway, I don't remember the exact number, and he came back and he said something like 50 or 60 rooms. This would have covered every lobby, every boardroom, meeting room, and office, everything except the bathrooms. And I said, okay, I want you to laminate these values and then get them up in every single one of those rooms. The idea wasn't decoration. It wasn't about optics. It was so that when someone faced a decision, any decision, big or small, the values were there to consult, right in front of them, every day. You want the values to be part of the air in the building, not something people remember once a year at the offsite. I can also remember many times when someone would come to me with a question or a problem, I would simply point at the values on the wall and ask, "What do those tell you to do?" And this was actually really powerful in two ways. First of all, it helps build strong employees who feel autonomy and responsibility. But probably more importantly, it demonstrates to them that the owners live and breathe this stuff. Another thing we did was a Friday lunch, every week in every office for the whole team. Now these were occasionally a lunch and learn kind of thing, but usually they were just about bonding and team building. And we had a rule. You can't take your food back to your desk. I would enforce this personally. If someone tried to slip away with their plate, and of course they had nothing but the best of intentions in mind, I would stop them and say, "You know, Bob," or "You know, Susan, this is not about eating." And the idea is, to drive home that this is about bonding. We would often invite guests, customers, suppliers, people from outside the business. And we had one rule for everyone who was new. If you were there for the first time, you had to tell a joke. Now it sounds small, but it did something. It broke the ice fast. It made people human immediately. And over time, it became one of those things that people really looked forward to and talked about when they left. That's what a ritual does. It creates shared memory, and shared memory is the fabric of culture. We also used those lunches to recognize people. We really tried to catch people doing things right. Not just the big wins, but small stuff too. The person who stayed late to fix a client problem. The one who helped a colleague without being asked. Recognition does not have to be expensive. It has to be real. And it has to be public enough that people see it happen. Because what you recognize publicly tells everyone what you actually value. But underneath all of it, the values on the wall, the rituals, the recognition, there's one thing that matters more than any of them. Modeling the behavior you want to see. Everything else is infrastructure. This is the foundation. If you say you value transparency and you withhold information, the infrastructure doesn't matter. If you say you value people and you treat them as replaceable, the values on the wall are a lie. Your team watches you constantly, more carefully than you think, and they take their cues from what you do, not from what you say. So show up the way you want them to show up. Handle the hard conversations the way you want them to handle them. Treat people the way you want customers to be treated. That's it. That's the whole thing. Culture is the one competitive advantage your competitors cannot genuinely copy. They can undercut your price. They can reverse engineer your product. They can steal your playbook. They cannot walk into your building on a Monday morning and take what you've built with your people. That's yours, if you build it.